Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Bigfoot Tales, and today I hope you got your passport handy, because we're going to be taking a trip across the big pond, the Atlantic Ocean, and heading over to Britain. And we're going to look at a story that was in a magazine, occurred actually in the late 1890s in area of Derbyshire, England. It's interesting to note that there are several actually Bigfooters that come from the English area, but we'll get into that in just a few moments here. This comes from a publication called Wild World magazine. It was in some other newspapers, so it's an actual story. It's not a piece of fiction. And it has some photos accompanying that story. And that's the biggest reason that drew me to this particular wild man story, is one of the particular structures. And that I'm going to hold off till the end of the story because it's very interesting, very compelling. And it's something that you'll want to compare to what we see for Bigfoot today. But again, this is from a story in a magazine from October of 1904. And this story is called Wild Man of the Pique. It was written by H.L. Haddon. And again, just as a recap of the story, it describes how people lived in a village in Derbyshire had to deal with a so-called wild man of the woods. It was an extraordinary being, as they put it, who apparently wanted to live in primitive ways. But it raises some questions that we really should be looking at, that a lot of Bigfooters are not actually, well, to be honest and blunt, don't want to have anything to do with, because it would throw their image of what Bigfoot is out the window, and they would have to actually look through a different window at this creature to try to get to the bottom line of what this story is. And again, this is from England, Derbyshire area. The actual name of the village is called Bakewell, and you can see it here on this map that I'm zooming in on. It's in the beautiful Peak district of Derbyshire, as they put it in the story, and one of the sites is this one here that I'm putting up, called Haddon Hall. There was a railway that ran through here called the Midland Railway Runs. It's pretty picturesque, but they talk about the journey from Derby to Bakewell, and this map that I'm putting up here is the actual area where this story took place. So if you're an England fan and you want to go looking for the wild man of the woods, Bakewell is just as good a place as any to start with. Then here's a viable story. And again, here we go with a story. It's called The Wild Man of the Pique. The sleepy little village of Bakewell lies in the beautiful Peak district of Derbyshire. One of the sights for visitors is that glorious medieval structure, Haddon Hall. The whole country around, through the heart of which the Midland Railway runs, is of the most picturesque description. And upon the occasion of my recent visit was wearing its most alluring garb. The journey from Derby to Bakewell was a perfect dream of sylvan beauty, many of the slopes being simply carpeted with bluebells and forget-me-nots, and in places laved by the glistening waters of the River Wye. It is necessary for the proper understanding of the veracious narrative which follows that the exact geographical and relative positions of certain parts of Bakewell should be clearly understood by the reader. Emerging then from the station, you come upon a small bridge which crosses the railway line. Facing you is an extensive grassy slope. This is the golf links. Skirting the links and stretching for miles to Matlock, and it is a dense wood, known locally as Wicksop woods, some of the recesses of which are well-nigh inaccessible. A path runs through the wood, but on either side of this the undergrowth of bracken is so thick that it is impossible to penetrate far. There are also several old stone quarries in the woods, and where the ground is comparatively clear, it is much broken up with boulders. On the outskirts of the wood is situated Haddon Hall, the Wye sweeping through within a few yards of it. About equidistant between the station and Haddon, on a kind of plateau on the slope of the hill, is a reservoir which supplies the village with water. On a certain calm, balmy spring evening on Friday of the week, certain young ladies were enjoying the delights of golf on the Bakewell links. As to their identities, that is not a matter of the moment, except to state that they were daughters of prominent residents. You may call one the Honorable Gertrude, and another the Lady Araminta, if you so choose. And perhaps by doing so we may understand better the social caliber of the ladies in question. Moreover, as has been stated, they were playing golf, and that is a sport of the quality. Well, the ladies swung joyously along after the elusive little ball, chatting gaily with one another, when, having arrived near the summit of the slope and close to the Wicksop wood, they stopped suddenly, and for a moment stared in amazement toward the dense foliage. Then, with sundry little screams of alarm, turned about and fled incontinently down the slope. What had happened to startle the Honorable Gertrude, the Lady Araminta, and their friends? Nothing more nor less than the appearance of an extraordinary apparition. Bursting suddenly through the undergrowth came a man, or something resembling a man. His clothes, if indeed he could be regarded as clothed, were of the most meager description and of the most eccentric character, consisting solely of a tattered shirt, boots, and an ancient silk hat. He wore long straggling locks, and from under his shaggy brows his eyes glistened impishly. As this weird being advanced with leaps and bounds, he emitted strange noises, which increased the ladies' terror 100-fold. Down the slope they fled helter-skelter, and over the broken ground, slipping, falling, rising again, little heeding scratches or bruises, their one idea being to get as far away from that horrid spectre as possible. Strangely enough, when he saw the consternation that his appearance had caused, the man himself plunged back into the sable depths of the forest fastness, still howling and grunting. The news of this exciting experience was soon brought to Bakewell, whence it traveled via the press far and wide over the land. A wild man of the woods, a real live, breathing, dancing wild man. This was too much for Bakewell. The whole place was stirred to its depths, and almost its entire and active population rose as one man, and, pressing into service a variety of weapons, from walking sticks to death-dealing blunderbusses, went in search of the wild man. The butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, everybody joined the party, and, spreading out, they beat the woods and countryside for miles around. But no wild man appeared. As evening drew near on this eventful Friday, which will doubtless in future figure in red letters of the Bakewell calendar, many of the rustics gave up the search for the day. But some of the more ardent spirits formed themselves into small watch parties, and, equipping themselves with lights, kept guard over the woods through the nocturnal hours. The next morning the only news they had to report was that they had seen a flickering light in the remote depths of the wood, which moved about like a will-o'-the-wisp. It was thereupon mooted that the wild man might be in direct touch with the lower regions, and be torchbearer to his satanic majesty. Some daring youth volunteered to pursue the mysterious light when next it should be seen. It had actually essayed to do so, but it proved to be a veritable will-o'-the-wisp, and nothing tangible resulted from the quest. The next day, Saturday, the search was continued. By this time the police had also joined in the hunt, and thus given official cognizance to the support of the wild man hunting. It happened in this manner. Superintendent Blake was seated in his office, studying some documents, when a small boy burst breathlessly into the place and blurted out, "A wild man, sir, a wild man," and promptly collapsed. The inspector looked up with a professional frown, regarding the small boy as a black-hearted miscreant. The latter shrank before the piercing and steadfast gaze, and between his tremulous lips there trickled the words, "Wild man," and nothing more. Then the superintendent spoke, and these are the memorable words that he uttered. "A wild man? Why, what the... how the... where?" The official spell thus being broken, and being encouraged by the interrogator investigatory, the boy became suddenly communicative and flowed on like an immortal brook. "Yes, sir, in the wood, all shirt and boots and hat and long hair. And he dances, and he makes funny noises, sir, and frightens people, and... "Yes, yes," interjected the inspector, stemming the torrent of eloquence. "We'll see about it." Forthwith, he summoned his subordinate, and they conferred together, extracting as much intelligence from their juvenile informant as their astuteness could contrive. It was thus that the police, at length, interfered in an endeavor to rid Bakewell of its unwelcome wild man. But that elusive and mysterious individual was not to be so easily dismissed. He even had the effrontery to pay a return visit to the golf links, where he again startled some ladies at his meteoric appearance and incomprehensible antics. This time the terrified ladies straightway reported the matter to the club, and two gallant male members, one, the club professional, set out in pursuit. Pushing into the wood, they were lucky enough to catch a good view of the mysterious stranger, and they gave chase as fast as the numerous obstacles would allow. They noticed that the wild man was now bareheaded, having probably lost his top hat in the haste of his flight. His streaming locks lent an added weirdness to his appearance. Although the golfers exerted themselves to the utmost, they failed to overtake the fugitive. He scaled precipitous slopes, almost superhuman speed, and scorning the undergrowth, climbed trees and swung himself from branch to branch and from tree to tree with the agility of a monkey, while his toiling pursuers looked on amazed. Very remarkable as this picture is described to me, the wild, scantily clad creature, with his tangled masses of hair, clambering swiftly through the almost impenetrable recesses of the wood. Needless to say, he easily outdistanced his pursuers and was soon lost to view. And the golfers returned to the village, pondering over what they had seen, leaving the wild man still at large. Subsequent to this, the strange visitor made repeated appearances in various parts. For instance, one man saw him indulging in a siesta on the banks of the Wye. Directly he noticed that he was perceived, however, he retreated to the friendly seclusion of the wood. This was near the village of Rowsley. Again, Mr. Littlewood, a tradesman of Bakewell, surprised the strange creature enjoying a dip in the waters of the Wye. But again, the wild man betrayed that the excess of modesty, which always seemed to prompt him to seek safe asylum amongst the foliage. It was very clear that he was no ordinary tramp, for he exhibited, on various occasions, a strong predilection for water. This was some sort of consolation to the Bakewellians, until a local farmer discovered him taking his ablutions in the reservoir which supplies the village with water. Then they concluded this love of his cleanliness had gone too far. Each night flickering lights could be discerned on the highest points of the hills, no doubt fires kindled by the wild man for his personal comfort. The police thoroughly searched the woods so far as they could, and kept watch during the night hours, and were eventually rewarded by the discovery of a rude hut, with the cold ashes of a fire in it. The shanty was constructed of branches of trees and bracken, which grows in great profusion in these parts, and was sheltered from the wind by a wall of stones. It was in this direction that the light had been first seen, but since then fires had been noticed much further in the wood, and indicating that the wild man had shifted his quarters to the thickest part. Most rigid search, however, failed to locate either the man or his camp. The bucolic mind is a peculiar thing, and entertains strange ideas of a joke. On the Sunday, when the hue and cry was still fresh, the village blacksmith in Bakewell wrapped up his robe in a parcel and, quitting the smithy, made his way into the Wicksop wood. Here he put his nightshirt over his day clothes, took off his hat, ruffled his hair, and broke forth into view, waving up his arms and gesticulating. Up to this point the joke was eminently successful, but it most effectually deluded the villagers into believing he was a genuine wild man, and they pursued him. There happened to be among the pursuers several gamekeepers armed with loaded guns, which they had every intention of using. When, after a lengthy chase, they cornered their supposed quarry, One of the members dropped upon a knee, leveled his gun, and was on the point of firing when the identity of the fugitive became apparent. And the trigger, fortunately for the joker, was never pulled. He came within an ace, however, of being shot, and would have had only his own folly to thank for the catastrophe. So, in spite of everything, the wild man was never captured. The last seen of him was near Haddon Hall. Who and what was he? Yeah, that's the end of the article. Like I said, just a short one, but it's from circa late 1890s from England. And a couple of the things, again, in this story that brings to mind some questions for me, anyways, is the fact that he was so scantily clothed. One of the things that I've been looking at here, and first of all, I want to state that I do know that there's something out there. I have seen something in the woods, so I know that we're not chasing something that is just an imagination, but something that is physical. But what it is, I really can't tell. I call it Bigfoot because I don't have any other name for it at this point in time, but I would like to find out what it is. And there are several people out there that are sort of pushing various identities of this creature onto the public. And I think in the greater aspect of this whole story is they're actually doing a disservice by convincing people that this is what this creature is when we actually don't have a sample. We don't have a body. We don't actually know what this is. So until we actually have one in a cage or somewhere on a reserve, all penned in, where they can be tested and determined whether this is human or animal or whatever it is, I think you really need to keep an open mind on it as to what the final identity is. My feeling, and again, this is just my opinion, at this point in time, is that it's quite likely that these Bigfoot are descendants of a human race. And we'll get into that in another episode. I don't want to get in too long on this because most of my videos are not watched all the way to the end. So I probably lost a lot of people by now, but thanks for staying on and tuning in towards the end, because this is an interesting picture coming up. But again, let's look at the facts. There's a wild man, long hair. They claim he was wearing a shirt and boots and a hat. And this leads me to believe in one of two things. Number one, it was a totally demented individual. And if this was the case, then why did they have such a hard time catching him? Well, part of the reason is because he swung from tree to tree like a monkey. I don't know of any normal human being that I have seen can actually do that. So this is a pretty interesting and pretty compelling statement out of the story that suggests to me that we're not dealing with a simple human being, but a true wild man of the woods. But let's get into the biggest reason and what caught my eye when I was looking through these old papers of his hut. And if you look at it, take a good long look, and again, this is a photograph, not an artist rendering. It's a photograph from circa 1890s time frame of the wild man's hut. And if you look at it, it looks an awful lot like a lot of the Bigfoot structures that we see today. So I'm going to leave it to you. Is it possible that this is simply a joke? Or could this have been an actual Bigfoot? And then that leads to the question of, is Bigfoot human? And if Bigfoot are human, do some of them try to acclimate themselves into society? Some of the ones that look more humanish than these so-called fur-covered giants that we hear so much of. But I'm going to leave that question for another episode, because I have a long one coming up, a research piece that I've been working on for quite some time now, over a year actually. But I have to spend some time out in the netherworlds doing some investigating on a couple of points before I share it. But I find the story that I'm going to be sharing on that one very interesting. And it happened right here in Maine, and it lends me to believe that I think we're really, in the long run, uh, you know, driving up the wrong roadway as we search for the identity of this hairy man of the woods. Again, thanks for tuning in to Bigfoot Tales and for hanging on till the very end of it. And we'll see you next time. Don't forget to subscribe and share this video around. And again, happy squatching.